Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to Feed the Fire, a Chicago Fire podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and in this episode, even though the Fire had this last weekend off, along with most of Major League Soccer, there were 4 pretty meh games going on. There were some headlines around the league that we're going to get into, and we're going to look ahead at their next match against Toronto FC. Not much of that league news was based on the Chicago Fire, but we're going to go over some of the other transfer news, other entertaining headlines and things that have popped, and maybe touch on a little bit of that USMNT performance against Colombia in their Copa America warm-up. So stay tuned for all of that and more. Hey soccer fans, Nick here once again on Feed the Fire, and it's great to be talking with you all this week. Even though we didn't have the Fire match, there was a lot going on around the league and in American soccer. There's a lot going on in my local soccer. My son's U8 team that I coach had their final games of the season. We had back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday because of a rainout a couple weeks ago, and as bad as the Saturday game went, it was that good on Sunday. The kids were really down on Saturday, and they learned a hard lesson that you can't just dribble through everybody on the other team. That eventually that third, fourth, or fifth defender is going to get you. And I think they took the lesson to heart, because on Sunday, they weren't just passing, they were passing with a purpose. They were playing balls up into the corners, they were playing crosses, they were laying it off for some of the late arrivals in the box, and had a really, really good result. And I was crushed for my son, because he so wanted to score. He's only had 2 goals on the season, and some of the kids on the team are scoring 2 and 3 a game because that's just where they're at compared to some of the other kids in the league, and he was just crushed. And I felt so bad. We got a penalty kick awarded to us, and I had 4 kids run up to me and say, I want to take the penalty, I want to take the penalty. And I guess I'm grateful that they came up to me to ask, rather than the one kid just taking it and doing it on his own. But to be fair and to not look like I was playing favorites, I said, look, Yanni's the one that took the shot. He's the one that earned the penalty kick call. He's the one that's going to take the penalty kick. And on the one hand, my son was just, but I'll never score now. And on the other hand, I was like, well, it was fair, and gosh, I know just how crushed he would have been had he not converted that penalty kick. But I'll tell you, he was doing things. He even took on a cross, it was on a corner kick, he took a one-time shot from his left foot. I didn't think he had it in him, and he attempted it. He put it on goal. Just not enough power. The keeper got down on it. This suspiciously tall 8-year-old keeper that was knocking shots down, was probably the only kid in the league that could actually jump up and grab the crossbar for these goals. But I'll tell you, the kids played a heck of a season. It was a lot of fun. I don't know if I'll do it again in the fall, because I think they're starting to get tired of my voice, and I think they're ready for the next step in their development career. I don't know if I can give it to them, but man, it was a lot of fun that last game, and big thanks. If any of the parents out there are listening, or any of the kids, it's always easier and much more fun to have good parents. So if you have kids, be good parents, support your coach, and if you are the kid, thank your parents for bringing you to all the practices and games. All right, with that little bit out of the way, let's turn to some other housekeeping for the podcast here. I want to give a big thanks to Alex Campbell and everyone over at CHGO Fire for having me on as a guest co-host on their last episode that aired June 4th. It's on YouTube. You can go back and listen to all our thoughts on the Fire's recent run of form. Speaking of YouTube, we just published our All-Star Ballot video. So go over to Glasshouse Soccer on YouTube, and you can watch my ballot selection, as well as learn a little bit of my thought process for it, and also growing the Glasshouse family. You'll get to see my daughter and my son with their All-Star Ballot picks as well in the second half of that episode. Also, I want to I don't know if it was Alex Campbell's show, or if it's all the stuff you guys are doing, or the things we're putting out on YouTube, or whatever else it is. Thanks to everyone, because I've been contacted by a couple sports aggregator and podcast-centric websites about partnering with the show. So we're going to kind of feel that out, see how it goes. So stay tuned for some big programming announcements in the future, hopefully, and we can continue to grow the show. So now is a great time to continue sharing it, growing it. Let all your friends, family, soccer people in your lives know about Feed the Fire, and let's keep growing the podcast and growing the interest in the game. I do have to make a correction from a couple of my last episodes. I kept saying that Yorgos Giakoumakis, the Atlanta United striker, was going to be transferred to Chivas. That's incorrect. It was Cruz Azul. I should have known that since Chivas has a tradition of only signing players of Mexican descent. So Giakoumakis obviously is Greek, but it's Cruz Azul that is going to be signing him. It looks like it's all but a done deal. A $10 million transfer fee paid to Atlanta United, which you can't pass it up. Even if Giakoumakis was having as good of a season as he was last year, which he's not. He's very frustrated. He's picked up an injury. He had an injury during the season, very frustrated with his team and the service he's getting, not getting. The body language is poor, and when a striker's not scoring, of course he's not going to be happy, but he's really showing his displeasure. Atlanta United's not playing well. They fired their coach. A lot of things going on there. So for Atlanta United to get a $10 million transfer fee when he's underperforming and they only paid $4 million for him a couple seasons ago, that's phenomenal business by Atlanta United, and I don't blame them for making this transfer. And like I said, they're going to hire a new coach. They're likely selling Almada, so they've opened up a couple DP spots, and they're going to have cash. They're going to have player openings, coaching openings. Like, this is exactly what Garth Lagerwey, as the head of this organization, wants to have to attract talent. Hey, Mr. Future Coach, we can sign whichever player you want to. We got a boatload of cash and some DP spots. Hey, other executives or other players that want to come over here, look what we can do. And it's great because it's the roadmap for the Chicago Fire. Let's part ways from Shaqiri, sell Fede Navarro, fire the coaching staff, and rebuild. We can do it all in one season, just like Atlanta's doing. Though I am a lot more comfortable with a Garth Lagerwey rebuild than a Heights and Pelzer rebuild. And yes, I did say transfer Federico Navarro. There are even reports of interest from him from Boca Juniors back in Argentina. Now, he had come to Chicago from Talles club in Argentina, and the Fire signed him as a U22 initiative player back in August of 2021, then gave him a huge contract extension at the end of the 2022 season, which extended his contract through 2027 with a club option for 2028. So that's a real long-term contract, and that seemed like good business for the Fire. You've got a young player with lots of contractual control, but after 2022, he was poised to kind of become the next Diego Chara. That's how people were looking at him, because he was second in the league in tackles from his D-mid position, but he has not lived up to that potential since. Due to injury, due to coaching, due to just bad team construction, due to a lot of different factors. Fede Navarro, and maybe his own little motivation. Maybe it's some family stuff. He recently had a child. I forget when he got married, or if he is married and what his family situation is like. So there might be a lot of different things that are affecting his play on and off the pitch. So if the Fire can, again, signing of him to that long-term extension was good business because you have a young player under control. And if you can develop him, he would have been an excellent partner alongside Gaston Jimenez a few years back and now alongside Kellen Acosta. But he hasn't developed, but he's still very marketable because of his relative young age, he's 24, and because he's got a few more years of control on that contract. So very good team-friendly contract, and I don't think he's making too much money where you'd want to say we need to dump the salary on it. So very similar to Giakoumakis, the Fire signed him for about $4.5 million and have reportedly said they will not accept anything less than a $10 million transfer fee. Now, I don't know if the Chicago Fire are in the same kind of negotiating standpoint that Atlanta United were, saying like, hey, we want $10 million for a former Golden Boot winner at Celtic and at whatever Dutch club that he had played at before, and while in Greece. I don't think they're in that same kind of position, saying, hey, we got a pretty good D-mid here for you. Give us $10 million for that. I don't know if it's going to fly. Then again, like I said, team-friendly contract there. It's going to be a good contract, what they're paying him. I'm sure if he does make the move down to Boca, then they will increase his salary with signing him, but I guess they don't have to because he's all under contract, and it would be very good for the Fire to get that $10 million. I assume they would take, $6 to $8 million if they end up getting a solid offer for it where it's a buyout. That was the other thing they said. They want this to be a full-on transfer, no loans with options to buy out, any of that cute stuff that teams have done in the past. They want this to be a full transfer for $10 million. And if they sell him, great, that's a lot of money, and you really have some things to play with in the offseason. If they don't transfer him and he stays with the team and he gets back healthy and fit, well, that gives you time to replace Gaston Jimenez. Like I said, if you sell him, it gives you money to replace Gaston Jimenez. Okay, I'm not making this about Jimenez. But I really like, though, the Acosta-Pineda defensive mid duo, and if Fede Navarro is the backup for that, I think that's fine. But the club seems to prefer, or at least Frank Klopas seems to prefer Mauricio Pineda as a center back. I'd like to see Wyatt Olmsberg come up and get some minutes and let Pineda move up into that center mid role, that D mid role. So maybe that's not what they want to do, that they do want to keep Pineda as more of that center back or backup center back when they are competing for trophies, and move Fede and kind of rebuild the entire midfield in the offseason. Now, speaking of the Chicago Fire and where they're at and what they're doing, MLS writer Matt Doyle put out his mid-season grades, and this is what he said about the Chicago Fire. What's gone right? Chicago have taken 5 points from their last 3 games. The run of relatively good form, by Fire standards, cheap shot, has come with the formation switch to a 5-3-2 and the early release of DP Xherdan Shaqiri. The Fire sent him off to the Euros to join Switzerland and handed the number 10 role to homegrown attacker Brian Gutierrez, who has been energetic and mostly good. 2 things Shaqiri has not been since his arrival. I can't disagree with you, but yeah, low-hanging fruit on that one there, Matt. He continues, they're well below the playoff line, and the teams they're chasing all have games in hand, so a postseason appearance, which would be their first since 2017, does not seem plausible. And I think he's right. I think the Fire, to have this be considered a successful season, at least from this point on, just need to improve, play better, get Kuipers going, get Gutierrez going, keep Brady high, and get your back line healthy. And then if they start winning games and getting points and streaking towards the playoff, then you can really put some stock into that and focus in on that. But I don't think they need to be like, we have to make the playoffs right now. It just does not look reasonable with where they're at in the standings. And yeah, like Doyle said, the teams they're chasing. Because the teams below them, or the team below them, New England, they took 1 point in 2 games from. So they are already way behind a lot of these teams. And if they are chasing Atlanta, 1 point against Atlanta in 2 games, they had a draw and a loss. So they are not getting points from the teams around them. At least they got that win against Montreal. We'll see in the return leg if they can at least leapfrog the team from Canada. All right, what else does Matt Doyle say here? But at least there's more effort on display now. I think, quote, more effort, unquote, was a realistic thing to hope for from this group at the start of the season, and they've kind of delivered on that. Here's what hasn't worked, according to Matt Doyle. It's just all the usual Fire stuff. Wow, what a statement there. High-paid players not leading the way, pieces that don't fit together on either side of the ball, simple errors that strand poor Chris Brady. Well, I'm glad he agrees with me, and he's seeing that the defense is hanging them out to dry. High-paid players not leading the way. Xherdan Shaqiri, obviously. They got rid of Jairo Torres. Hugo Kuipers, I don't know how much you can lead as a striker who needs to get the ball more. Pieces that don't fit together on either side of the ball. Yeah, that was kind of, the hobbled together defense. If you want to look at Aragoni, Suquet, Salquist, Dean, Gasper, Gutman, everyone just kind of threw them together, and then hoping Chios and Turan could hold things down in the middle with Pineda spot starting. And I don't even see Fabian Herbers really fitting together with Selassie, Mueller, and these outside backs. He's kind of doing his thing in the middle there when he does get that run out. And so yeah, it's hard to disagree. The coaching staff hasn't figured out that recipe yet. Okay, they've already played the easiest part of their schedule and are now looking at 7 of their next 9 away. 6 of those are against current playoff teams. Rough stretch, but there is a little bit of a light. We'll talk about that in the preview against TFC. Matt Doyle finishes his piece about the Chicago Fire saying, "I do wonder how much time this front office has left, but I've said that each of the past 6 windows. So," and he just trails off there, written trail off there. Yeah, he's right. Like, how many chances, how many bites at the apple is this front office going to get and continually come up short from just making the playoffs, right? Not even winning a trophy. Just, they're not even making the playoffs here. So this has to be it. I don't know if Heights is going to, if I should say Mansueto as the owner is going to give Heights and Pelzer another season to get a new head coach and to get a couple DP pieces in there with, hopefully, again, that assumes Shaqiri's gone and that Gaston Jimenez is gone as well, or at least off a DP contract. Is he going to give him that last chance to kind of put it all together with the coach, with the players? I don't know. But all I do know is if they sign players before the coaching staff, it's just going to be a repeat of this year. They need to find a coach and work with him on the players and system he wants to run, or find a coach that can utilize the current players. Though right now, that let's send our wingbacks forward and play crosses in isn't working out so well. Splash of Gutierrez driving forward in the middle. Maybe you get a good coach who can come in and help him develop and build around him instead of building around wingbacks. Matt Doyle gives them a D for their grade, and he says, "I like enough of what I've seen over the past 3 games to be generous." So a D is generous for the Chicago Fire by Matt Doyle standards. I think it's an appropriate grade. I don't want to say the Fire are failing, because they have had a decent little bit of run here, and you've seen just scrambling at the left back position due to injury. You have seen actually, no, that's about it, because I was going to say everything else they could fix but just don't want to, as far as what's going on with the players and coaching staff. So I think D is appropriate. They are a below average team. They are not a C team. They are solid D, so I think that's a decent grade for this point so far. But enough about so far. Let's look ahead. Let's look to the Chicago Fire's upcoming game against Toronto FC. Now, TFC, the Reds from north of the border, they are sitting on 7 wins, 7 losses, and 3 draws, 26 goals for and 26 goals against. Currently 6th place in the Eastern Conference on 24 points. They are one spot below Charlotte, and they are 1 spot above Columbus, though they're even with Columbus on points. They do own the tiebreaker. They've had to make do this season without star Lorenzo Insigne, who's only appeared in 9 games, and I think only started 7 maybe, just due to injuries that he has picked up. But John Herdman has the team gelling really well. He's a breath of fresh air for those guys after Bob Bradley's terrible stint. But also, Federico Bernardeschi, their other Italian star, has more than picked up the slack with Insigne's absence. Bernardeschi has 7 goals and 4 assists, and if I recall, I think a lot of those have come over the last 3 or 4 games. So he has definitely been the focal point of kind of a rejuvenated TFC here. Again, I know they're in 6th place. I'll consider that a rejuvenation for how they were last year. If the Fire were in 6th place right now, I would consider that like a phoenix rising from the ashes, not just a rejuvenated season. But anyway, back to TFC. They are top 12, I'll say, in passes attempted, passes completed, and passing percentage. They're a little higher up. I think they're 6th in passes attempted and completed, and 12th in passing percentage. So they are a team that does like to try and work the ball around and maintain a little bit of possession, but their shooting numbers are about middle of the pack. So similar to the Fire, having a hard time transitioning that possession to offensive opportunities, to scoring opportunities. The defense can be a little suspect, and we saw they're even on goal differential, but they do get a lot of players behind the ball. So that's something the Fire are going to have to figure out how to break them down, either on a quick counterattack, or which we've liked Gutierrez doing recently, driving forward into the center of the defense, or the Fire are really going to have to be sharp on the ball, something I haven't seen from them this season, being able to have to break down an opponent in possession rather than just serving in crosses. So we'll see what kind of gives here. If the TFC defense is going to be giving up some good opportunities to the Fire early, if the Fire can take advantage of it, or if it's just going to be a little bit more of a defensive slog for TFC. Now, they are at home, so they may want to play a little bit more aggressive, but they are down 2 starters due to red card suspensions. This could change the game. Bernardeschi, the big star that we just talked about with his 11 goal contributions, as well as starting center back Nicsoen Gomis will be serving red card suspensions. They will be looking for goals from somebody else, as well as trying to replace Gomis, who is their starting center back. He has started all 13 games for them. So this is going to be a real tough challenge for TFC. They have had the extra weekend off to try and get ready for it, so maybe they won't be in as bad shape as if it were coming back, in back-to-back game weeks. But it's MLS. It's professional sports. You never know what happens once that whistle is blown and the ball is kicked off. Now, looking at the TFC formation, their last matchup, a 2-2 draw against DC United, they ended up playing a 3-4-2-1. So that starting formation saw Sean Johnson in goal, a defensive line of Raul Petret, Nicsoen Gomis, and Kevin Long. Midfielders, Tyrese Spicer, Alonso Coelho, Davy Flores, and Federico Bernardeschi out kind of running on the left wing there. Their attacking midfielders, MLS household names here, Derek Etienne Jr. and Jonathan Osorio, and forward striker DeAndre Kerr. So they are going to need Osorio and Etienne and Kerr to really step up and produce some goals in the absence of Bernardeschi, and they are going to really have to play solid defense without Gomis back there calling things around. But we know how good of a goalkeeper Sean Johnson can be, so I'm sure he'll take charge of that defense as well. Prediction time. Given the suspensions and the momentum of the Fire, hopefully that momentum hasn't been lost after a week off, I think the Fire can go on the road, look for some goals, and win this game. I think they do win this game. I will say, I'm not just going to say they can, I'm going to say they will. I think it's another 2-1 victory for the Chicago Fire. TFC don't have an identity without these 2 starters. The Fire are going to do just enough to bother Sean Johnson and get some goals, and that'll be it. They'll keep the point streak going, and they'll start the win streak. 2-1 Fire. Let's keep it going here. Now, we are at halftime for our show. It is our sponsor break, and I would like to recognize the Feed the Fire podcast sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. So please, as the weather starts to warm up, or if you're taking your summer road trips and travel, get out to your local 7-Eleven, grab a bottle, 2, 3, 4 of Skira Icelandic spring water, stay hydrated, and support our sponsor here. Now, typically, we have our John Donovan segment, but without a Fire game, John hasn't submitted any sort of recap for us. But what I will say, if you guys are following kind of the greater Chicago area soccer world, you're familiar with the Chicago House, you're familiar with their head coach, Matt Poland, and it has been reported and confirmed that Matt Poland will be leaving the Chicago House, an amateur club, and going to a new future coaching job, who knows where. Well, it just so happens that our friend John Donovan is friends with Matt Poland and has kind of talked to him unofficially and will be trying to get an interview with him and give us some details once the announcement comes from the club. Matt has been very professional and proper in saying, I'm not going to disclose anything, or I'm not going to talk to you off the record until the club announces it. But what John has been able to establish is that Matt Poland will be going to a USL club for his next coaching stop. And honestly, I would love if Matt Poland, and I think from what John's been hinting to me and telling me, if I can read between the lines, that would have been the dream job, is for him to come to the Chicago Fire eventually. So couldn't get it done this season, but hopefully something in the future for Matt if the stars align here. All right, getting into the second half of our show, there is, just a lot of little things we're going to touch on here. Top selling jerseys, some other coaching news, USMNT type stuff. So let's get into it. Some of the fun, some of the fluff of talking MLS and sports always has to do with jerseys. Who doesn't love talking about jerseys? Always good for a little bit of a conversation. And like I said, the epitome of sports talk fluff pieces have to do with the jerseys. But MLS Store just put out their top selling jerseys of this season so far. And surprise, surprise, number 1, Leo Messi, and number 2, Luis Suarez. Actually, there are 5 Inter Miami players on this list. 1 and 2, Messi and Suarez. 18, Jordi Alba. 24, Sergio Busquets. And 25, Ben Cremaschi. I feel like that's, I'm a Miami fan, and I already had my Messi jersey, and I'm really loving it so much, I think I'll get a Ben Cremaschi jersey. Or maybe that's someone who's like, I'm a Miami fan, but I don't want to have people think that I'm just a Messi fan, so I'll buy my Ben Cremaschi jersey. Continuing down the list, number 3, Lucho Acosta from FC Cincinnati, the reigning league MVP and one of the top players again this year for one of the top clubs. So that's not surprising. I'm actually kind of surprised that he's still number 3. I assume that a lot of Cincinnati fans already have Lucho Acosta jerseys, and maybe they just wanted to go out and get the new one, and that's why he's back up to number 3 again. But hey, good for them. Next, Cucho Hernandez, Columbus Crew. Similarly, they released a new jersey with a lot of imagery related to the stadium, even though people call it the Charlie Brown jersey. I think that just helped drive up the sales, to be honest. I think that's pretty awesome. But a lot of people obviously buying Cucho Hernandez jerseys. Number 5, Ricky Puig, the star over at the Galaxy, the former Barca player there. So again, big name stars 1 through 5, absolutely. Can understand why those players are there. But now getting into number 6 here, Seattle's Pedro de la Vega, and number 7, Seattle's Jordan Morris. We know how rabid these Seattle fans are. Miami had 5 players in the top 25. Seattle has 4. Number 6 and number 7. Number 11, João Paulo, and number 21, Christian Roldan. So I think the Seattle fans just love themselves these new jerseys here. Number 8, 9, and 10, Hani Mukhtar, Yorgos Giakoumakis, and Emil Forsberg. So a couple of staples here, Giakoumakis and Mukhtar, and the newcomer Forsberg. But unfortunately, for all those who bought that Giakoumakis jersey, maybe they're getting them all on discount now, and that's what's driving up his numbers ever since the rumors that he was going to Cruz Azul. 11 through 15, João Paulo, Aiden Morris, Jacob Schaffelberg, Darlington Nagbe, and drum roll, hometown player, Chicago Fire's Brian Gutierrez is number 15 on the MLS Store jersey sales list of the year. I can't remember the last time a Chicago Fire was in such a ranking like this. I don't even think when Shaqiri came over that he cracked the top 20 of jersey sales. Maybe he cracked the top 25. I don't know. I don't know anyone outside of Chicago who's buying it, but this is actually really cool. Now, I think a lot of this does have to do with the return to red, with the new red jerseys coming back, and people saying, I need to get a red jersey, let's get a Gutierrez jersey, rather than, any of the other players or stars or the non, like what I have, the no name on the back, right? So I think that's having a lot to do with it, but also with Gutierrez kind of stepping up and becoming more of a player in the spotlight for Chicago, fans who are getting into the Chicago Fire, that's the go-to jersey. I think it's great. Now, 16 through 20, Hector Herrera, the Mexican international with Houston, Carlos Hill at New England, Jordi Alba, Miami, Jose Martinez, Philadelphia. That's an interesting jersey choice. And John Tolkien, number 20 for the Red Bulls, who just on the cusp of some of the USMNT camps, as well as getting a contract extension with the Red Bulls. Rounding out the top 25, number 21, Christian Roldan, Seattle. 22, Bukayo Hyungwane of Minnesota. Number 23, Timu Pukki of Minnesota. And then Busquets and Kramashi, 24 and 25 of Miami. Now, it's interesting to see Hyungwane and Pukki on this list. Not a lot of, I would say, national appeal. You know, when you have guys like, say, Carlos Hill, Lucho Acosta, Hani Mukhtar, former MVPs, people around the country who are just big MLS and American soccer fans might pick up those jerseys. But I don't think those Minnesota players are doing it. Definitely the star, I don't want to call it the Starry Night jersey. I forget exactly what it is. But their jersey definitely has that style and appeal. And if you're going to get it, get your players that are scoring goals here. So there you go. Those are the top 25 MLS jerseys. Getting into some other league news, the Chucky Lozano move to San Diego FC has been finalized by all accounts. Also, FC Dallas has fired their coach. FC Dallas have parted ways with head coach Nico Estevez, the club announced on Sunday. Assistant coach Peter Luchin takes over as interim, while the search for a permanent replacement begins immediately, as the club announced. So that is some news for FC Dallas. What's interesting was Estevez's record was like pretty much 500. It was like 28 wins, 27 losses, 26 draws, something like that. It was all within like 26 and 28 for those three numbers. So he was pretty much a 500 manager with his time at Dallas. But what got him fired is this was supposed to be a year the club makes a leap forward. Not just, hey, look at that, we surprised some teams, we made the playoffs, kind of a year. It was, no, we are going to be solidly in the playoff conversation, if not the top four of the Western Conference conversation. We're going to continue to develop our stars and get some young players moving. None of that happened. 3 wins on the season. So something for Chicago Fire fans to ponder here. Dallas and Atlanta have 3 and 4 wins. They both fired their coaches before the All-Star break, before League's Cup. Chicago Fire have three wins, and Frank Lopez appears to be as secure in his job as ever. Something to ponder, Chicago Fire fans. Well, to close out the show, the USMNT fell to Colombia 5-1 in a friendly match prior to Copa America as a little bit of a tune-up. Now, I don't want to linger on this too much. It's not a big U.S. podcast here. And to be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch the game. I've read some recaps, some player ratings and things. And really, it just seemed like an all-around poor performance. That the players weren't motivated. The coaching staff didn't have them set up the right way and didn't react and adjust. Berhalter did come out and criticize the players like they just didn't want it. They just didn't perform, I think was maybe the words, or didn't execute that he used, words that he used. So he's putting a lot of that poor performance on the players. And yes, I will agree with him to a certain extent, because when the team gives up 3 goals in a 15-minute span, that's them just not playing. Like, to give up a goal, turn the ball over, and give up another one right away, like that's not as much tactics or style or coaching. That is just, dude, hold the ball for a few minutes, maintain some possession, start a counterattack, put them on their back heels. That is the opposing team, Colombia in this case, saying, we got these guys right where we want them, time to stick it to them. Now, I will put it on coaching a bit, because this does seem to kind of be a bit of a trend where they can't score and then they get blown out as you get later on into that second half, or you're giving up goals or not putting games away, which comes back to haunt you. So that definitely will fall on the coaching staff, and the fact that they've now been working with these players for anywhere between 3 and 6 years and are still not able to play the kind of soccer that they want to. Something's got to give. Either the coaching staff's going to be let go, or they're going to have to change up what they do, or they're going to have to bring in some new players. But there's really no time to do that. It's Copa America, and then in 2 years, it's World Cup on home soil. So that's kind of my thought on that. A couple other notes that I jotted down here regarding this game. We've always known with Berhalter as the USMNT manager, he doesn't care about results of friendlies. His focus has always been on the big international tournaments, like the Copa America, like the World Cup. But again, when the team looks as bad as they did versus Colombia, this is not signs that his methods are working. It only gets tougher for them from here on out. They've got another friendly. I forget who their opponent is. But if they do get out of their group in Copa America, which consists of Uruguay, Bolivia, and Panama, they would likely face Brazil or Colombia in the quarterfinals of the tournament. So, and I say if the USMNT gets out of the group, it's no given. I believe that Uruguay is better than them. I think the U.S. is better than Bolivia, and Panama is kind of the wild card of the group, the other CONCACAF opponent that has been invited to play in Copa America this year. So if the USA wins their group, then they would face the second place team of Group D. They're in Group C, and that would likely be Colombia or Brazil. So there you go, USMNT fans. Something to look forward to, something to not look forward to, I don't know. But there's been a lot of great jokes out there about how when with an all-European lineup they lose, everyone can blame Greg Berhalter. But when they put MLS players in and they lose, then everyone can blame MLS. It's never the European players' fault for not performing. That's the jokes that's been out there. Maybe there's some truth to it. We'll let you guys decide. Just remember, soccer's entertainment. All right, everyone, that's the whole show. I want to thank you again. And I want to reiterate, thanks to everyone who's listening, writing in, emailing, responding to the polls on Spotify and the questions on Spotify. All of this, not only is it fun for me, and it's great to be able to talk with you and interact with other fans from around the Chicago area and around the country, but to see the development and to start getting inquiries from other sports aggregator websites or podcast networks, sporting networks, things like that, it really shows that that there's a desire for MLS news, for Chicago Fire news, and the fact that you've supported me now is letting me be able to reach out to different people. One final thing, and I promise I'll end after this, because I don't. Speaking of reaching out to people, there is a fellow podcaster, a friend of mine, Gerald Lucas, over at the Wise Men Say podcast, a Columbus Crew podcast. You know, I've been on their show, talked with him, and Ty Fisher, had a great time with them. They came to the Columbus Crew game here in Chicago. They were up in the press box and covering the game. A couple of really good guys, and Gerald especially a good guy. He's going through a real rough patch in life, and he's unfortunately not working right now, and is behind on a lot of his financial responsibilities, I'll say. So there is a GoFundMe out there. I'll try to tweet out the link tonight so you can go find that. But if you can support, I know they're rivals on the pitch, but never rivals in life. And if you'd like to support him, support another independent MLS content creator who unfortunately has fallen on some really hard times outside of his hobby of and his passion of covering the Columbus Crew in the league, please do so. And with that, I will thank you, and I will let you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you again next week. Let's go Fire.